Welcome back to Keys to the PNW, the show where we unlock the stories, the people, and the hidden gems that make life in the upper left truly special. I'm your host, Donna Musin, and today's guest is the ultimate truth teller in Pacific Northwest real estate. He's the one who looks past the fresh paint, past the staging, and tells you exactly what's happening behind the walls and in that crawl space. Now, I often talk about the dream of living here in the PNW, but what if you could find a partner who values the foundation just as much as the view? In a real estate market as fast-paced as ours, you need more than just a walkthrough. You need a protector who keeps that modern Northwest hustle while maintaining old school commitment to getting the job done right. My guest today has taken a personal passion for precision and scaled it from a grassroots mission into a full-blown standard of excellence for local families. He is the force behind Uptown Home Inspections, a brand that is known for delivering the most thorough, honest, and uncompromising look at what it truly takes to protect your investment. He's not just checking off a list, he's building confidence and protecting legacies. Joe Johnson, the man himself, welcome to the show. I am so glad you're here.
Wow, what a intro. That was special. I love it.
Well, you are at the top of my list of home inspectors when I work with clients. For those listening, I'm a real estate agent as well as your podcast host. And so it's really important to me to protect my clients. So you are at the top of that list, Joseph. So this is not anything that's meant to just fluff you up. It's all
I
truth.
appreciate it.
So Joseph is coming on this podcast today from a garage. I can see the door and the springs in the background. So he is hard at work even as we speak. He's taking a little break. So just so you know, if you're thinking about bringing him onto your team to inspect your home, he is very focused on what he's doing when he's doing it. But he's taken time today to break and talk about what home inspections are, what it is to be a home inspector, all of the above. So I know that you, Joseph, this hasn't been your lifelong career. So
No.
talk to us about kind of what led you into this line of work. Did you wake up one day and say, I've got it. I want to be a home inspector. I want to crawl in crawl spaces and up in attics. Talk to us about how you came to be home inspector extraordinaire.
Well, that definitely wasn't how I came to the conclusion. So for me, I bought my first house originally in 2010. And when I went through that process, I had no idea of what was going on. I did pay for an inspection. I never met that inspector. I don't even think I got the report. It was a new
Oh no.
construction house, and my agent basically handled everything. And I seriously have no idea what was on that report at that point in time, but I remember paying for one. I lived in that house for about 5 years, and I had to save up money because I had nothing. I was in my 20s. I barely had furniture in that house. So I saved up money to get an air conditioner because I had been burning in that house every summer for years. And that air conditioner kind of led to where we are now. So I got the air conditioner installed. I had a state inspector come over to look at the electrical. We talked quite a bit, and I found out what he did. I had never heard of the industry before. Kind of put it in one ear, and I was like, man, that might be a cool job. And then I left that house in 2017 to move to my new house that was getting built at the time. And when I stopped by there, I met another inspector, and that really set things off after that point. I had talked to him about what he did a little bit more, and it kind of brought up the things that had happened a couple years before. And then I decided, I sold my first house. I'm moving into my second house, and I'm married now, and it's time to see if a career change is for me because I was in a totally different industry before. So it took me about 4.5 years because I went the long route. I wanted to be a state inspector first. I didn't want to get in crawl spaces. I just wanted to look at one thing and go home, right? But I ultimately ended up here after I went to college for inspecting because I wasn't able to get a job, even with the certifications that I had coming from the state. So I was competing against people who were in college, and I wasn't able to compete because I didn't know that they even had a college program in the midst of me studying with the state. So I went
Huh.
to college. One of my professors was wondering after, my first full year while I was doing so well, it was only because I was regurgitating the same information that I had learned years prior with the state. So I was basically just flying through college. So after we talked, he said, "Hey, I think there might be something a little bit better for you since you are one of those people who like to stand up in front of people. You like to get up and talk. You like to discuss what's going on, and you have a calming effect with your voice." And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" And he goes, "How about home inspecting?" And I said, "Well, when I went to my first code class, they said home inspectors don't know anything." And he goes, "Well, wouldn't you be the exception to the rule because you went through the same classes that they went through, and now you're going to go through these classes over here?" And I said, "Well, I guess that would be the case. Might as well look into it. None of my family has owned any businesses that has been successful in a sense or that would allow them to just work solely in that business. So I had no bearings. And I figured I would just try to fumble my way through it. And here I am today, 6 years later."
Awesome. So that's such a great story because, this isn't I think when people listen and there's entrepreneurs that I talk to, I think there's a misconception that entrepreneurs just figure out that perfect thing, right out the gate. They
No.
don't. There's usually something that leads to it. There's something that says, like, what led me to real estate is I wanted to use my skill set, but in a more positive way where I can control my future, but also really give something to the
Hmm.
people that I work with. And conventional sales models with corporate America, they may work for some people, but for me, it sucked my soul out little by little every single
Yeah.
day. So that I found very little joy in it. I made good money, but I
Hmm.
didn't. I went home wishing I caught the flu that night, so that I could not have to do it the next day. I don't do that in real estate. I've been doing it now for about the same amount of time you have, 6 years, and I am no matter even if it's a dry spell, I'm excited to wake up every day and do what I do. It doesn't mean I don't get cranky about it sometimes, but I am not like hoping for illness to get out of my job. I love hearing that story of how you came to be. And I will say that the way you inspect homes, the way you approach clients is very different than other inspectors I've worked with. And now I understand a little bit of why. Yeah, I think it's education and the type of training you went through. And then just your personal demeanor is very calming. That person that said that to you is absolutely correct. He was spot on with that. You have like this kind of calming, cool vibe. And that isn't always the case with home inspectors. I've sat on a lot of inspections for other agents as well that use other inspectors. And in fact, just this last weekend, and I thought, okay, there's just not enough information I'm hearing now about this almost 100-year-old house. Like I'm not feeling so good, but it wasn't my client, so I was just helping.
Right. Yeah, it's unfortunate because the education that inspectors receive when you're just going to be a home inspector, I don't feel is adequate for the actual job. There needs to be more to it, and that's what one of the keys that made me successful is that I had spent so much time trying to learn this thing that I knew kind of why things were done that way. So when I started to see it, then I knew how to interpret it, and that part can be kinda hard.
Yeah.
As I've hired other inspectors to work with me, that is the, key thing that seems to be missing in our industry is just how to interpret why these things are the way that they are so you can give the information correctly to the clients, and it's something that's very important to me that I try to teach anytime I get a chance to, talk to other inspectors that want to learn those things and that.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like your first experience with home inspector was less than exciting. Your
We're
first
less than
I couldn't even imagine that. Knowing what I know now, probably ask me
Yeah,
15, 20 years ago, absolutely, I might have not known any different, right? But
yeah.
knowing what you know now, when you look back at that experience, absolutely unacceptable?
Yes, on 2 fronts. So the first one, I honestly don't know what happened in that inspection, and I have no idea of that report or anything like that. My agent totally handled everything. I remember paying for it, but that was it. The second inspection that I got, my agent also referred somebody to me, and I used him twice actually. I used him on my main inspection before I bought it, and then on my 11th month. And both of them were, really basic style reporting. So more of a, email black and white report, no photos. And it didn't contain a lot of information about the house that was useful for me. I had to find out things later on my own. Now, did he do an acceptable job and have I had a lot of problems out of either house? No, I haven't had a lot of problems. I did have some, but, just kind of, active nature or whatever. But I wish that there was a little bit more, and I definitely wish that the communication was there. And that is the key to me is understanding what this report actually means and in context of what should be fixed, shouldn't be fixed, should be addressed later on, or needs to be addressed immediately. I didn't get any of that context.
Well, and for anyone listening, we're talking about home inspections. Now, this is something that can happen at different points in a real estate transaction, depending on what it is, which side of the transaction you're on. If you're a seller, you can have someone like Joseph or Joseph come in and do a home inspection that is kind of like a pre-inspection so that you have it ready. You already know what the issues are. You can fix those issues or you're already aware. So when buyers put offers in on a home, you already have a good idea of what's either going to be found or what was found and was fixed. I think the more common, though seller inspections are getting more common, at least I've been hearing that more from my colleagues. But when you're purchasing a home and your offer is accepted, you go under contract. The next step, like I'm already, as soon as I've submitted an offer, I'm already checking on availability for inspections because I'm assuming that my offers are going to be accepted. And typically they are. So that's where Joseph and his team comes in, is they come into that home to find out what is wrong and what is right. You do recognize the things that are okay with the home and very good. But you're also there more so to uncover any issues that need to be addressed prior to the sale closing. And that leads to negotiations and perhaps price reductions, things like that, or actual fixes. So, anyone listening that isn't familiar with what a home inspection is or what a home inspector does, that's kind of a nutshell. Now, there's also someone who owns a home can just reach out if they want to know the condition of their home and they've been in it 10, 15 years. They can also hire Joseph to come in, him and his team to come in and do a full inspection, give you a full assessment on what's going on. Maybe you have no idea or have never looked in your crawl space. I myself have never looked in my crawl space. It is not my jam. I don't want to know what's down there. Okay. I just don't. That and the attic, I do not want to know because there's got to be something that's going to bite my face off in there. I mean, that's just, I assume that. That's my unreasonable maniac mind. And I have had to go kind of peek into places I don't like as a real estate agent, but I leave that to Joseph. But knowing what's the condition of your home at all stages of the game, whether you're purchasing, whether you're selling, whether you're just owning, is really important. So I think I've heard a lot of misconceptions about what a home inspector is, what home inspections are. What do you feel, Joseph, is the biggest misconception people have about your job, your line of work, what you do?
Oh, wow. Um, there
If there's a
seems
few, you
there
can share.
seems to be a few. Um, every inspection that I go on will have some kind of limitation, right? Whether that's I can't climb a roof because it's 6 stories tall,
Yeah.
or you have a really bad rodent problem, like we were discussing before the podcast, and I'm not particularly fond to crawling through rodent feces. But that's every home. Even new homes have limitations. Sometimes the builder puts limitations on us where it's a liability thing and they don't want us to, either stand in certain areas or, be on top of their roofs because they're fairly new. So I guess just understanding that there are always some kind of limitations to an inspection. The other misconception is that everything will be perfect with this house as long as I live, as long as you come over and inspect it. Even the absolute best inspector cannot guarantee that that house will be perfect for the time that you live in there. Things will happen. You'll spring a leak if you're there long enough. That's just
Yep.
kind of how it works.
Yep.
Now, do we want those things to happen? Absolutely not. But with every material, it doesn't matter what you have, you're going to have some kind of issue at some point in time. It's just the reality of owning a home.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I bought a condo once and a year in, they apparently the builder got a bad batch of pipe
Hmm.
for the plumbing. And because mine was not the only issue, apparently we found out it started to leak. It cracked and leaked. Come to find out, they kinda narrowed it down after about a year of similar problems in other units that it was the batch of piping that they had was just bad, and they proactively tore into other people's walls to, fix the builder within the first year, it's builder covered. They found cracks that hadn't leaked yet, but that any minute now they were going to bust through. So, things do happen. What you do is not a guarantee that there won't be an issue, but it does give you an idea. Would you agree that you're making an educated and good decision, or it allows you to make an educated and good decision on whether this is the right property for you?
That's correct. That's exactly what it is. It's just
Yeah.
not a guarantee of future occurrences.
Yep.
But knowing what you're getting into, knowing what you're buying, knowing what materials you're buying, knowing the condition of the home, knowing whether it had been damaged before by nature or whatever else, knowing whether it's leaking currently, that is exactly what I am there for. So then
Absolutely.
that way you can make an educated guess or get repairs or get reductions for those things so you can take care of it yourself. So that is exactly what I'm there for.
Yep. I love that it's kind of a baseline too of, when you move in, if you do have something happen in a year, it wasn't there before, most likely. So, you at least know it hasn't been going on for 8 years, so it's probably not causing XYZ problem. So, I love that baseline aspect. I've had clients 3 years after they purchased, talk to them, they're like, "Yeah, I had this happen, but, it wasn't as bad as we thought it was gonna be because it had just happened," or, you name it. Knowing where your starting point is really important, and I know that in 2020, 2021, and maybe a little bit into 2022, there was a whole lot of people wishing on a prayer that there was nothing wrong with the homes because it was so competitive during that time that they were waiving home inspections. What are your thoughts on waiving home inspections?
Now that I know everything, because also if we go back to my first couple inspections, I did not have a sewer scope, did not have a radon test, did not do mold testing. It was basically just a general home inspection. And I was buying new homes, and I think that's what my agents may have been thinking at the time. So it's no fault to them, and I wasn't
Yeah.
educated enough to tell them the things that I felt like I should have. But I would never waive an inspection. New, used, $2 million, $6 million. There's really no reason to waive an inspection. You have to know what you're buying. It's the largest purchase that most people will make in their lifetime. And you don't want to go into it completely blind because you will find things. And when those things come up, you're now responsible for that house. As soon as you sign on the dotted line, it belongs to you. So you can't really come back to the other person and say this or that about the condition of the house because now they moved on to their next property or moved on entirely.
Yeah.
Knowing exactly what you're getting into and doing all your inspections is crucial because these things can get very expensive.
I joke with clients when I first meet with the buyer clients, and after I get to know them a little, I'll often say that if you think that you're going to waive an inspection on my watch, I'm not the right agent for you because I just can't, with good conscience, sleep at night. Even if they're like, "No, no, I get it, I get it. I'm a handy person." I'm like, "Ah." I still will plead, beg, all of the things. I've never had any of my clients that who insisted on waiving inspections. Some toyed with the idea, but I completely gently, but completely shut that down. It's like, If that's the deal breaker, my question is, what is trying to be hidden? You know?
Yeah, that's fair.
If they're like, "Well, we're not gonna accept your offer unless you waive an inspection." I don't know. It's like, you know what? There's another house that's probably gonna be better for you if that is a deal breaker for someone. Because I would shorten the inspection periods. I'd talk to my inspectors ahead of time, see what the quickest turnaround they could do. So it isn't about the amount of time. And I would even, write into contracts back then, and clients would agree that, if it's under 5K, we're not gonna ask for it. But we wanna
Mhm.
know what is happening with this house. We wanna know what its current condition is. And so none thankfully, I didn't have to walk away from any clients, but, I mean, it's just not my job is to be a fiduciary with their and that is watching out for their money, and
Yeah.
that's not doing my job very well if I'm not really, like, hardcore recommending that you do not overlook this part of the process. This is huge.
I mean,
So,
that's been a thing where I've had, several clients who were contractors themselves, and they wanted to waive, and, I've had agents kinda step in and say, "No, we're not gonna waive it, we're gonna go ahead and do it, and, we will figure out everything on the backside of what it is," and, you know, when I'm meeting contractors, I am speaking their language. I
yeah,
know how to switch to their language and speak to them directly and treat them like they understand, which is what everybody wants, is just to be understood, right?
yeah.
But I have never left one where they're like, "That wasn't worth it, and this guy doesn't know what he's doing." Always left with, "I didn't realize those were this, and that was that, and how this is done, and why that was done, and why this is good, and why this is bad. I did not realize that." And
Yeah.
most of them leave talking about, there was one point in time that I wanted to be an inspector. I don't know why that always comes up, but it tends to come up quite often.
I bet. Well, and that reminds me, even the pros hire pros, right?
Of course.
So, I mean, the best mechanic will often hire a mechanic to
Yeah.
do the work,
Yeah.
So, don't be that guy that does their own and then kicks themselves later. I mean, you have nobody to kick but yourself if you don't hire a pro to do what pros do. So
Right.
so with that thought process and the fact that you've purchased new construction, I think there's a huge myth. I know when I was buying my condo, and I will admit I did not. This was way back in early 2000s. I thought because it's new construction, I didn't need an inspection because I was dealing with the builder and they told me, "Oh, you don't need one." I know better now. And
Yeah.
I actually, who knows, maybe they would have caught that pipe problem. You never
Maybe.
know. That might have been caught and I wouldn't have had to have a wet condominium for like 3 weeks and a whole lot of mess. So, new construction myth. A lot of buyers think it's a brand new home. It's perfect. What are some of the common rookie mistakes you find on inspections for homes that have never been lived in?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's a rookie mistake, but mistakes just happen.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are working on a house. And take this for instance. Let's say we're building a deck on the back of the house, right? You got 4 or 5 guys out there building the deck. One guy is working on one part, says, "Okay, this Friday, I'll be back on Monday to fix it." Well, Monday he's sick. And the other 4 guys are now going to continue on. But that fifth guy that was supposed to be there, he had one specific thing that was supposed to be done. And by the time he came back, they were like, "Oh, everything else is done. So you don't have to worry about it." But his job was never completed. Nobody checked, right? Well, now you take that risk on because it wasn't done. There's been so many times where I've been at homes where I'm literally standing in the backyard. These are all spec homes, all these brand new homes in the back. And I can just go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can tell that all of those were done wrong. Okay, this one I look at mine and I go, okay, let me see on the other side if theirs were done right, and then I could just go right down the line and know that they were all done incorrectly. Now, is that a fault of the builder? No, and I think that's a misconception. They hire contractors to do work for them, and sometimes those contractors make mistakes. That's just a human thing, right? It is not to point out fingers or make one company better than the other because they all use pretty much the similar contractors if you really pay attention. But mistakes happen. There's hundreds of people working on a house. I'm just giving you one scenario. Somebody could have gotten fired, moved, whatever, quit in the middle of the job, and then they had somebody else come in and start working on it, and they may have missed a step or done it incorrectly.
Mhm.
There's plans that are there. They don't always get followed. So all of those things should lead you to the fact that you need somebody to come in there who is unbiased, who is, not does not have a skin in this game. They just want to be there to protect your investment and look at it and see if everything was done correctly. And that is the definition of my job. But no, there should be no new construction that should be skipped because those things happen so often. I've still, in over 6 years, doing 300 plus inspections a year, I have never had a zero report. Never. I've never had a zero report. Even on this house that I'm in right now, that is very large, 7,000 square feet, this house today
Wow.
and a little bit over $2 million. And I've already started to write up things on this house as well. There's just no house that is going to be perfect. That's a myth.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. And well, even if they weren't humans building it, there's still going to be mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, just like you explained, you got a bad batch of plumbing, right?
Yep.
Well, that's a manufacturing defect. It's not always the
Exactly.
fact that somebody is putting that together. It's mostly machines.
Yep.
And those things can happen, whether it's a material that is bad. And that's another thing that we look at on inspections is whether those materials have either been deemed to be bad or deemed to be defective to where we can say, hey, these things may need to be replaced because it's not all the time that a builder may catch it right
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
And then we go, oh no, that panel has a recall, or that plumbing has a recall, or there's an issue with the fittings, which is things that just normally happen. But
Yeah.
you need somebody with that knowledge to be able to point those things out.
It's kind of an eagle eye kind of a thing too. I mean, builders modern building is especially in the last 20 years compared to the previous 20 years. The amount of homes they build, the speed in which they build them, the products that they're using is so much different. So if somebody even bought a home 30 years ago and they're going to buy a new home and they're like, "Oh, XYZ," right? The way that homes are built now is different than the way the homes were built 30 years ago, 20 years ago. I would say even in the last 10 years, there's been some specific things. I mean, just the way siding is put on new homes compared to old homes, caulking, right? On
Yeah.
siding. Now they're using a plate oftentimes behind the siding, right?
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
you're no longer having to deal with caulking your siding every X amount of years to keep it good. So, things change and builders are doing that, but you need someone that has the knowledge inspecting those homes to know both sides of that coin, right? That the ones with caulking, what's wrong, and the ones without. So, having these home inspections, seriously, don't overlook them. Don't think that that's a negotiating tool. And any realtor that might be listening to this, if you use that as a negotiating strategy, let's talk. Let's have coffee with Joseph and maybe you'll come out just feeling a little different about that strategy. Yeah, new construction, always inspect. Always inspect
Right.
every home you're going to purchase,
Hmm.
no matter who you are. So, pre-listing inspections are coming up more. At least I've heard more agents doing that. I myself have never had a seller that was willing to do one,
Hmm.
even though I do mention it and bring it up as a way to not have surprises during or less surprises because each inspector will find different things oftentimes. But the likelihood of them finding that big massive thing and having it be a surprise is lower. Have you seen more pre-listing inspections happening or not yet?
I guess in the last year, I had an uptick over the previous year
Mhm.
of pre-list inspections, but I feel like they don't get utilized enough. And I was thinking to myself the other day of making a social media post about this, but I just hadn't found the language. But basically, here's the thing. For a pre-list inspection, I'm coming in and telling you everything that's wrong with the house currently, right? And that gives you a chance to break down that report and do the little things that change the conception that a person has about the home, right? So a lot of times it's not really the home itself that fails it, it's just how people feel about it. So if I tell you a roof is bad and your crawl space is messy and it needs to be redone and there's some mold in the house, you can swallow that, right?
Mhm.
That's three big things that you need to take care of. But if I go, there's 15 cover plates that are missing, six light bulbs that are out. This faucet over here is leaking. This one's missing a stopper. Shower pipe is loose, the toilet's not secured to the floor, the carpet is dirty, 5 smoke detectors that are expired, the filters are dirty, and then I give you those other 3 things, it's a lot harder to swallow because then that makes it look like you've never taken care of your home,
Their head's
right?
gonna explode.
Exactly. But if I just give you those 3 things and you took care of all those other things, which in essence, when I think about it, over all these inspections that I've done, you will pay for your inspection and then probably pay $400 to $500 more. So let's just say $1,000. Well, cool. You got all those things taken care of. You can leave the major issues to negotiate in later if that's not something that you want to do. But now that first person that signs will likely stay in that home because they already love that home. It's just that how you made or how they feel about the report when they have everything on there,
Yeah.
right? That leads you to not going back on the market. You go
Yeah.
back on the market, there's that $1,000 gone right there. Now we have 30 to 60 days. You're paying 2 mortgage payments, right?
Yep.
Well, you could have saved that by spending the $1,000 up front,
Yeah.
replacing all those light bulbs, doing all the smoke detectors, fixing all the cover plates, doing all those things, tighten up things here and there because I have to call those things out as well. These are all things that can be done in a weekend that totally transform how people feel about a house. And this is
Mhm.
things that I see because I know when I'm doing a report that is like that, where somebody has been through there before, because I'm like, oh yeah, because all these things were taken care of. And then when it's not, and people just go, is there anything good about it? And I totally despise when I get that because I have to go, well, yeah, there is good things about it, but you didn't pay me to come tell you the good things. You paid me to come tell you what was wrong, right?
Yeah.
But if the seller would have just took some time, they probably could have even netted more off of that house and got the $1,000 back because now everything is dialed in and ready to go. You got 3 things that need to be taken care of, and now you can negotiate those things instead of a person feeling bad about the house like you never took care of it. And I understand it. Homes are just limited. And that's how they are.
Yeah.
We tend to not do very much maintenance, even myself. But when it comes time to selling, there's just things that you should take a look at so in that way you can maximize your investment. There's 2 times where you should use an inspector, prior to, and then when you're prior to again.
I absolutely agree. And when you say that $1,000, if someone has to sit on the market 30 days or
It
more
costs them
right
about
now, oh, you're
3 or 4
you're gonna
times that.
have a price reduction of at least $10,000
Yeah.
probably to sell it. And
Mhm.
then they're gonna come in low on offers. I mean, we're in a more balanced market now. We're no longer in the 2020 and 2021, thank God.
Yeah.
Um, time frame where there was no negotiating happening. We're back to
Mhm.
negotiating. And those little things like those, the cover plates and the dirty carpet and the things that might make their brain explode because it's just a lot of little things.
Mhm.
Even there could be no big things on the list, but those little things are also going to hurt your price. They're going to
They add
hurt
up.
the money you take home when when you sign on that closing table
Mhm.
because that is like a first impression. It's like showing up to a first date, after you crawled out of a crawl space, right? It may take a little more to overcome to see the good in amongst all the grime. You want to
Correct.
make a good first impression. So, and I think if a good agent is in the mix, an agent that understands these things, they hopefully are coaching the seller. So if you're thinking of selling, I would coach you and say, now there's this inspection report is going to be like 50 pages.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of little things, and then there's going to probably be a few bigger things. Don't let your head explode. But these little things can impact people's first impression. So take a weekend, make it fun, have a friend over, swap out all those plates for, 22 bucks from the old local hardware store. Swap them out. If it freshens it up, throw a fresh coat of paint on the bathroom. Those kind of things, your overall investment for especially those small investments will come back to you.
Right.
But overlooking that can cost you 10 times whatever you would have spent to do those minor fixes. Now, the big stuff, now that you could decide as a seller, we're going to be transparent and tell them this is happening, but we're going to price accordingly and we're going to negotiate with that in mind. But still, do those little things. It's super important to first take a breath before you read his inspection reports. I tell everybody that, take a breath. There's going to be a lot on there.
Mhm.
We're going to start with the big stuff and work our way backwards. And and I do that with buyers too, because you also don't want to penny nickel dime a seller because two of the light switch plates don't match or something. Like, seriously, don't
Yeah.
shoot yourself in the foot either as a buyer. Like, if you need, I will replace those for you when you move in. Like, I can do that. I will give them to you wrapped up in a nice little gift. So, don't do that. So, return on investment. So that kind of is a natural like lead into, return on investment. So you deal with a lot of you see a lot of things. And
Mhm.
what is like one of those small things that would be like $100 to fix that gets overlooked that could turn into that $10,000 nightmare? What is one of those, relatively small things that if somebody takes care of early on
Hmm.
won't explode into something that'll bite them in the hiney later?
I guess I would harp back to plumbing. Most of the time I see, especially at the water heater, right? A lot of times those pipes rust at the water heater because either they have dissimilar metals or something like that. And over time, that's under pressure and they tend to break at that point. And there's been
Oh,
countless amount of times where I've seen houses that have had a leak over in that area, and you could tell that the pipes were rusted out, and that's what happened. But I thought of something even bigger, especially here in the Pacific Northwest. Here's the big kicker here. We are a rainy climate. We rain a lot, right?
yeah.
Here's a $10 fix that could save you tens of thousands of dollars. Make sure your gutters are draining out in the right location, because if they don't, then they're going at that foundation, and you don't want to know how much it costs to fix a sagging foundation. It is an ungodly amount of money, right? Not only to mention if
Yes.
if it's a finished basement and things get damaged, as far as like drywall, carpet, and things like that. Those things are so crucial to making sure that they're away from the foundation. If you don't have perimeter drainage, you can use splash blocks. And I think those splash blocks are about $10, like you were saying. And if you don't have those and you're just letting it drain right next to your foundation, that can be a $10,000 fix. So I think that one's better than the water heater.
Oh, man, and foundations, I was sitting on an inspection on a 110-year-old home in the Hawthorne district. Beautiful
Uh-huh.
home, but for all intents and purposes, right? Very nostalgic feeling, great lot size, all of that. The foundation. We had to have a foundation guy come in, and it was $150,000
Oh yeah.
to fix that foundation. You could sneeze in your bedroom and you risk the house dropping 10 feet. I mean, like, it was that bad. And they had put a skim coat over it.
Hmm.
So it wasn't like obvious until the inspector started poking around in that skim coat and checking the foundation, like doing the best he could in those areas where it looked a little thinner or, but they dressed it up to look awful pretty. And I don't know if the home seller did it or if the previous seller did or who did it, but
Hmm.
that was definitely covered. But oh baby, when they started chipping away at that, then when the actual foundation fixers came out to look at it to really give the full on estimate beyond the inspector, and that's something we'll talk about as well. That's when they got in kind of deep and dirty, and I am upstairs on the porch just hanging out. It was a nice day, letting them do their work, and I could hear the crumbling, like it was quiet, and I could hear this little gravel crumbling because I mean foundations 100 years ago they used a lot of big aggregate, right? And so
Yeah.
they learned that that's probably not the best for longevity, right? Over
Hmm.
time, but those old foundations can be problematic. And this one, oh baby, it was a problem. So, have you run into any occasions in, obviously not new construction probably, but homes where there has been a cover up at some time of a big problem?
Yes. So just to answer your question, 100%.
Yeah.
Uh, there's been several times where I've found, especially in finished basements, using a thermal camera, that it's pretty much leaking all over the place. Everything's been covered by drywall, and you just can't see it with a naked eye. And then the other thing is fires. Fires are covered up a lot, but there's usually some point in the house where I'll find it, mainly the attic
Mhm,
or in the ductwork or things like that, places where I know that people would forget to clean that kind of show me what was going on with that house. The 100 old houses, the floor structure,
mhm.
things like that, where somebody has painted it to make it look pretty, but when you look close, the wood is pretty much scorched or checked. So yes, I mean, it happens all the time, especially on, homes that are either flipped or, recently remodeled, whatever. There's a lot of times where things get, covered up or trying to hide it from the inspector.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want anyone listening to start to be paranoid either. Sometimes these things are done not to hide something. They think they remedied the problem.
Yeah,
You
that's true
know,
too.
I'm assuming that whoever skim coated that basement in Portland thought that maybe that was the fix. Maybe it was a DIY kind of a thing where they thought, "Oh, this is just crumbling." They didn't understand the extent. Although it was sold 2 years prior, I'm like, "Who didn't figure out this basement wasn't good?" Um,
Yeah.
Again, not all inspectors are created equal. So, that is something to consider. But don't be paranoid going into things. You just have to go into things kind of with an open mind, understanding that things will be found. It's not the end of the world. And really, on my end of it, nothing is technically a deal breaker. It all depends on the tolerance of the individual who's purchasing the home or selling the home on whether or not they want to deal with the fixes. And if you want to deal with it or negotiate it, cool. If you don't, cool. It's not always a deal breaker, even if these things are found. When you were talking about the whole gutter thing, when you were speaking, I'm like, what's mine? Like, what would I say in this? And I was going to say gutters, not cleaning your gutters. It's like a couple $100 to hire somebody. Don't go up on your own roofs, people, unless you're a trained professional. You're gonna fall off at some point, just saying, and falls are bad. But, clean out your gutters because
Yeah.
overflowing gutters, it starts to run over and back up into the fascia, right? And so
Mhm.
you get a lot of rot problems for just not cleaning your gutters. Like, please, people, clean your gutters or get gutter guards, something.
And that
Also,
goes
don't assume
with
gutter guards are gonna do the work for you forever.
no, they're not. But also don't assume just because you don't have trees over your house that your gutters don't need to be cleaned.
Yeah.
That is a common misconception.
Yep, absolutely. I asked myself this. So out my window right here where I'm recording, right? I can look out and see the gutters. And I have no trees around this area of my house at all. Yet they're filled with leaves at times. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how does that even happen? Who puts leaves in my gutter? It
It
just
just blow
happens.
through the air.
It just happens. There's trees, there's gonna be problems. We live in a,
Yep.
a a wet environment. Make sure your gutters are clean. That is
Mhm.
one simple thing that you can do once or twice a year. Make sure your gutters are clean, you know?
Correct.
So, what would you say to somebody that gets your report after you've done the full inspection? These reports, I know what I tell clients. I
Mhm.
try to prime them on what to expect because if you don't, they're going to get this report that is long and has a whole lot of information on it. How do you help distinguish between this is a project and this is a disaster?
It usually just depends on what comes up on the report. Like there's there's times where you have to take it in context that this house is, there's so much going on that the financial burden leans it to being a project. And then there's times where there's just a bunch of little things which we just, discussed about how we can alleviate that, right?
Mhm.
But, it really depends on what the person is going in and expecting with that home. Like, are they expecting to buy a project? Are they expecting to buy something that they can just move in and set their stuff down? So it's really me figuring out what they want because there are people out there who want a project. They're planning on tearing everything down, so they don't care about it. They just want to know if there's anything additional that needs to be addressed because they want to make this their own idea. And then there's people that don't have the tolerance for that. So it's really figuring out where my client is and then addressing it as such.
And that is one of the reasons I recommend Joseph to my clients. His approach is really it's very systematic, it's very practical. Pragmatic's another word that comes to mind. And when he does, I've watched you talk to, I mean, clients last about a year ago ish now, maybe May, I
Mhm.
think was when they closed. You did inspections on a new construction over off of 185th. And they were very, very in the weeds, detail oriented folks in a good way. But the way that I watched you communicate with them, and then they were able to, because they were very, you have more intellectual types, type A people. You're like a chameleon. You work with whoever on the level that they are. And I
Yeah.
love watching that. I learn a lot every single time I am with an inspector. I probably learned the most with your inspection, just listening in on that time. And, I've been around construction my whole life with family, and so I don't come into it completely ignorant, but I take something out every single time. And that's one of your superpowers, I'd say. So you're very good with the clients. Very good with the
Thank you.
clients.
I appreciate that. It's always important for me, I guess, not only in my job, but in my life, is just meeting people where they're at.
Mhm.
So I try to find out where you're at just by general conversation, and then meeting you where you're at so you can understand what I'm trying to relay to you. I don't like being condescending. There's really no point. There's no
Yeah,
point me pointing fingers at everybody for the things that were done incorrectly. There's an understanding of what things go on, and I think, as I've gotten older and mature, those things, you just kind of understand them. So I bring all that to the table when I am out working with people. So then that way I can communicate with them, whether they're the intellectual type, the A types, all types of people, whether they're just nervous and need to understand. Those are things that I have to read. I tell myself all the time, it's not only just reading in the house, it's reading my client as well. Not that I'm
absolutely.
trying to manipulate or anything like that. I just want to understand what you need from me. So then that way I can give that to you in the way that you need.
And that is something that not all inspectors do. I've encountered a lot. Sometimes I love saying, I don't know that they're going to be on my list anymore. That'd be a never list. Yeah, Santa has his list, and so do I. Yeah, that's I don't know. So you've got some really cool tools of the trade though. Not
Yeah.
all inspectors use drones.
Yeah. I use drones.
You use drones.
Yep.
Any other fun tools of the trade that you have?
Well, I use drones a lot, especially in crawl spaces. I have a little crawl back that can go down there. I have too many tools, really. I do pretty much everything. I'm pretty much overkill at every inspection that I'm at because I'm the type of person that I do not like to be caught without the thing that I need to do the job. It's just the personality quip that I have, that I should have everything no matter the case. Because if it comes up, I don't want to tell you, hey, I have to run to the hardware store to grab anything. So I carry everything from ladders to radon tests, sewer scopes, my drones, several different screwdrivers, a drill, all kinds of stuff. So I'm pretty well packed out here. Um, and
I've
usually when I
seen
show up to inspections, people go, "Why do you have so many tools?" And it's like, I want to be able to do the entire job and then leave here. I don't want to have to come back.
yeah. Well, and I've seen how you keep your tools. And I tell you what, I should hire you to come over and redo my tool chest. I don't know. It's so organized and so just you show up ready. Pretty much whatever's gonna you're going to encounter, you've got something to deal with it, and I
Correct.
do appreciate that because I understand. These inspections, while they aren't horribly expensive, they also are not cheap, and so
Yeah.
having an inspector that shows up ready and with everything they need to do their job, to me is a just a level of professionalism that isn't always found in the industry.
I
So
take pride in being professional. I have pretty much seconds to everything that I need in case things break. Things just happen, and I don't want you or your client to have to sit around and wait for me for these things. So that's why I go to the extreme that I do. Am I a little bit extreme? Yeah, but I like that.
there's sometimes toys too, right?
I know,
Like,
this
not
guy's like
every
that too,
inspector has something that can crawl in the crawl space.
right?
They're in there like shimmying around, and I don't know. I question people who really enjoy crawl spaces as to their sanity.
Yeah,
Although
I
we
get
need
that.
them. We need people who do that. So I'm like, oh, I could never. That is a deal breaker for me. I'd rather go up on a roof and do hot tar roofing, which I did for a time in my younger
Oh,
years,
Jesus.
than crawl in a crawl space. So
Yeah,
I'll
I'd rather do the crawl space than
yeah.
hot tar roofing.
So of the inspections you do, there's like the most important ones. The ones that I will commonly recommend are general inspection,
Yep,
radon, sewer scope, and mold.
yep,
Am I covering the bases?
you are. Yes, you are covering the bases with those 4. There's not too many more, but depending on the age of the home, there can be other things that you may want to add, whether that's testing for lead-based paint or asbestos, or if you're, on septic testing that or the well, if you're on those kind of situations. But those are kind of more outliers than the general.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we're getting close to the end today. We've talked a lot about, what inspections are, why you should do them, few of the fun things you've found. Before I let you go, we talked a little bit about the gutters. We live
Hmm.
in the Pacific Northwest. There is always, well, not always, but often there's some mildew, there's a little bit of mold. We're
Yep.
wet. We're
Yep.
we're the land of the 9-month drizzle, right?
Yeah.
So most people wait until they see a leak to worry. What do you see? But you see the before and after. If you could give
Yeah.
one pro tip to every homeowner in our area here, what they should check before that first heavy November rain, what would it be?
Yeah. Clean your gutters.
Gutters. Okay.
Check your
Yeah.
gutters. Make
So
sure those
often overlooked.
if you have those splash blocks too, especially on the older homes, because you've gone through all summer, mowed your lawn, those splash blocks may have gotten displaced, making sure that they're back where they need to be so that water gets away from the foundation, cleaning your gutters, making sure that the water's not coming near it. And I can give you an explanation of it. And this is why it's so crucial. And I didn't think about this before being a home inspector, how it works. All right. So you have a gutter, right? And a downspout. And that is basically taking all the rain from that roof, whatever side it's on, and bringing it down. So if you imagine this, grab 3 friends and hold a tarp on one side, right? Stand out in the middle of the rain, collect water for about a half hour, and then tilt it towards one person and see how much water comes out of there. That's basically what your roof is doing. So when we concentrate that all near the foundation at one point, that's why we end up having these problems, because it's a lot more than just the rain that just falls in one area, because that wouldn't be substantial enough to really damage a foundation. But when we concentrate it into one area and all that water comes down there, that's when the issue becomes, because now we've taken that analogy that I just gave you and concentrated it all into one area. Now I'm just basically taking a water hose and putting all that water right there at that one point. Well, that has to be dispersed away from this foundation, and that is the whole point. With the older houses, they don't really have a way of controlling that. The newer houses, they do. This is why we have underground piping to bring all of that out. But the older homes didn't always have that, and that's normally where we find our foundation issues. So, making sure that those splash blocks are back out if you don't have perimeter drainage, cleaning those gutters, making sure everything is working right, that none of those are leaking, are crucial things that we should do right before the rain every year.
Words of wisdom right there. There's not a better nugget.
Yeah, yeah,
Because, man, leaks are bad.
they are.
Leaks can be very bad. Well, do you have a favorite type of home, Joseph?
No, not necessarily, but I am starting to appreciate views a little bit more.
Oh, very
I
nice.
I never thought of myself as a view person as long as I had an area that was kinda comfortable with some sidewalks and things like that. That's normally my thing. I'm a new construction type person for my
Mhm.
personal dwellings because my I see defects all the time, and I just don't wanna look at it all the time because 'cause I'm not working on my house. As much as I love this stuff, I like to do it and go home and enjoy my other things, but I'm starting to enjoy houses that have amazing views, and I've been blessed enough to be able to go to a lot of houses that I'll never be able to afford, but that have amazing views for my clients to look at, and I get to enjoy it on that time when I'm on those inspections.
I love that. I love that. I think my favorite type of a home, though I don't own one, is the old craftsman's. I
Those
just
can be
love
nice as
the
well.
the vibe in them, all that craftsmanship that went into a lot of those homes. You see the built-ins and the ornate woodworking that's in them, and I'm not a big woodworking fan, but in those
Mhm.
old craftsmans, the amount of work that went into just building those built-ins and things, it's just I think it's the history of it that I like and the really unique latches on the windows and stuff like that, although that probably is its own beast when it comes to home inspections.
I can tell you now that you said that, there is one home that I still remember to this day, and I inspected it back in 21 that was almost perfect. The only thing that it didn't have was a garage, but it had an
Yeah,
amazing view and was an older craftsman that had been completely remodeled. And even back then, that was a seven-figure home.
yeah,
Um, and I couldn't help because it was one of those old Portland homes that was built where you could actually go through the roof and you had a sitting area on the top. And
yeah,
once I found that out, I had an unobstructed view of all of downtown, and I'm right underneath the Fremont Bridge over by Kaiser on Interstate.
yeah,
So, right over
yeah,
there, and I had never knew that area had existed even though I grew up in North Portland.
yeah,
And I didn't know that they had houses that were that beautiful, but that house was amazing. That is one house that
yeah.
I can still remember to this day, down to the very minute details, because whoever owned that home before definitely did put the money into it and made it beautiful. So I would say
They're
that one is
really
my favorite house still.
there are some spectacular old homes like that throughout the Portland metro area. But
Yeah,
also, you need those inspections because there's a lot of weird stuff with those old homes,
of course.
even the pretty ones. Joseph, thank you for taking the time today. Where can people find you? I know where I find you. You're in my phone, but where can people find you if they want to have you out to take a look at their home, whether they're purchasing, where realtors can find you? How do people get to you?
So it's uptownhomeinspections.com, uptownhomeinspections at gmail.com. That's where you can find me.
Okay. And you should be following him on Instagram because he does a good job on Instagram. I don't know if you're on TikTok, but I follow him on Instagram and that we alluded to he was at a construction where someone kind of did a little jerry rigging on some stuff and it allowed for a bit of rodent intrusion into the crawl space. So earlier when he mentioned kind of hinted at that. That's where I saw him post a reel about that. And so if you like to kind of follow these things, even if you're not in the market, you never know when you might be. Follow him on Instagram at Uptown Home Inspections
Yeah.
because there's always a nugget in there, whether it's a beautiful home that you get a little peek into or some of these kind of horror stories. At least they're horror stories in my world. Like I'd rather face a lion than face a rat. Just
I hear
saying.
you. I hear you.
Like,
And
ooh,
I'm on all social media platforms at Uptown Home Inspections, TikTok, Facebook,
okay.
all the social media platforms. So Uptown
Yeah.
Home
So
Inspections.
so give him a follow. And if you have any questions about today's episode, you can reach out to me. I can connect you with Joseph. We're happy to answer questions and help you out in the ways that we help people out. That's just what we do. So I will let you go now, Joseph. I know you have a big home to be inspecting. Thank you
Yes, I do.
again for joining me today. You know, we call this show Keys to the PNW, but today Joseph reminded us that the key only works if the house behind it is built to last. So, huge thanks to Joseph Johnson with Uptown Home Inspections for giving us the truth behind the foundation today. If you're in the process of finding your piece of the upper left and you want that gold standard clarity, reach out to his team at uptownhomeinspections.com or find him on social media platforms at Uptown Home Inspections. I'm Donna Musin. Thank you for joining us today. Stay curious, stay protected, and we'll see you at the next turn of the key.